What happens when a 9-year-old girl, abandoned and forgotten at an airport, finds herself caught in a battle with a system built to ignore her? You won't believe how one pilot's refusal to fly without her on board turned the whole story upside down. Sometimes the world doesn't whisper to you that you're nothing. No, sometimes it yells it right in your face, blunt, loud, and unapologetic in the middle of an airport. Amara sat alone on a cold, unforgiving metal bench by Gate 24 at JFK Airport. The bench was as chilly as the intentions of the people who had just walked away from her, like she was an inconvenient shadow. 9 years old, a worn plush bear hugged tight under her arm, a fox-printed backpack resting by her feet, in brand new pink sneakers, not because she wanted them, but because they matched the white family she was supposed to belong to. But they left, just stood up and left. No, wait here. No water bottle. No phone. No note. Nothing but a cold breeze where love should have been. Daddy Brad with his slick-back mustache and that familiar phrase he spat out every time she asked a question. Be quiet, Amara. Mommy Tracy, all woke, but with eyes full of discomfort every time the little girl touched her hand. And now, empty. No one even noticed. Are you lost? A Latina cleaning lady asked as she passed by, clutching a rag soaked in the sharp scent of bleach. No, Amara whispered, eyes fixed on the floor, not looking up. I'm waiting for my mom and dad. She spoke it out loud as if repeating a prayer that might make them come back, as if words could rewind 30 minutes, or maybe a lifetime. But the minutes ticked on. Time was relentless, and there was no one beside her. At that very moment, Captain Brian Holloway strode down the airport corridor holding a tablet. Dressed in crisp trousers, a fitted jacket, and a pilot's cap, he was the picture of professionalism. People smiled at men like him, if they were white. Brian was black. That detail, though welcomed in the company's diversity statements, was the unspoken line between tolerated and truly accepted. He knew the rules. Be perfect. Be quiet. Be invisible. He turned a corner and then saw her, a tiny black girl, alone, sitting like a speck of ink on a sea of white faces and unfamiliar voices, a stain some preferred to ignore. He walked past her, almost, but damn it, something in him stopped. He turned back. She was clutching her bear, her face heavy with the weight of knowing this wasn't a mistake. This was the cruel joke life had played. Brian approached the nearest security officer. There's a kid at gate 24. Been sitting there alone for a while. We know. That's Amara Henderson. Her parents refused to accompany her. They left. Left? What do you mean, left? They just left. Cameras caught it all. They checked their bags, walked to the departure zone, then turned around and said they didn't feel comfortable, and just left her. Did you call the police? Child Protective Services are on the way. Meanwhile, the officer shrugged like this was just another Tuesday morning. She's sitting there waiting for someone who's never coming back. Brian didn't go back to the plane. The crew was ready. Passengers were boarding. Flight 873 to Los Angeles was minutes from takeoff. He told the dispatcher, I'm not flying until Amara flies too. You can't do that, they said. I already am. He went up to the child services room where Amara sat ignored by two women chatting about Netflix, the bear lying forgotten on the floor. Hey, Amara, he said, sitting down beside her. I'm Brian, the pilot. I'm not flying, she said flatly. They don't like me. What don't they like? Me, my face, everything about me. He closed his eyes for a moment. No filters, no sugarcoating, just raw truth, simple and brutal. You're right. It's not because of you. It's because of them, their weakness, their fear. Why? I tried. I washed my hands, said thank you, wore pink. I even stayed silent when they said my hair was too thick. Something inside him cracked, years of bottled patience breaking free like a dam bursting. Meanwhile, on board, passengers were getting restless. What's going on? Why aren't we taking off? A woman in Gucci screeched. The pilot won't fly until they sort out some kid, whispered a flight attendant, disbelief heavy in her voice. The security camera footage of the Hendersons abandoning Amara was already circulating the cruise group chat. Someone leaked it, and rightly so. A national flight's pilot refusing to take off because there's a black girl left behind like unwanted luggage? It went viral in 28 minutes flat. Twitter blew up. Facebook was ablaze. Downstairs, Brian was almost shouting, "Are you seriously going to leave her here overnight?" "Not until CPS paperwork is processed. We have protocols," came the unmoved reply. "What about human decency?" "You're not family." "I'm the only adult who's here. Isn't that enough?" "No." And then he heard a voice. "Yes, it is." It was Justin, a young lawyer on the same flight who'd stood up from the bench, witnessing the disgrace unfold. "I'm filing temporary custody right now through the court. I have a judge on Zoom." "That's unusual. Is abandoning a child normal?" A moment of silence. Someone clapped in the terminal. The flight board blinked a new message. "Delayed by captain's order." And when Amara stepped onto the plane, not as baggage, not as a problem, but as a person, the cabin erupted in applause. No one cried out loud, but eyes glistened. Even the Gucci lady's eyes were red, because among those passengers were mothers, fathers, children, and elders who understood. What these two did was no decision. It was a crime against a soul. And in that moment, Brian thought, I'm not just flying a plane. I'm placing children in seats and telling them, you are worthy. You are important. You are needed. What happened next changed everything. You won't want to miss how it all unfolded. Amara sat quietly by the window, her little plush bear resting softly on her lap, a silent companion in a world that suddenly seemed too big and too cold for a child so young and fragile. She wasn't watching the passing lights or the stretch of black asphalt rushing beneath the plane. Her gaze was distant, caught somewhere between silence and suspicion, like a soul still trying to grasp the truth of the moment, wondering if this was real life or just another scene in a story where she never got to play the leading role because, simply put, she was not the right fit. Ahead was the looming takeoff, but the plane seemed hesitant, suspended in time and space, as if questioning whether it should rise with a girl who'd already been abandoned not once, but twice. Captain Brian Holloway stood by the cockpit door, leaning against the frame, his face calm but the storm inside him far from settled. You know that feeling, when the world tries to tell you to calm down, to fall in line, but your spirit shouts back, "Hell no, not today!" That was Brian. He wasn't about to turn a blind eye this time. As they waited for clearance to take off, a man from the airline staff, white, with a face etched in corporate anxiety, stepped onto the plane, eyes flicking toward Brian. "Captain Holloway, you need to explain the delay. Complaints are coming in," he said, voice clipped. "Complaints? You want to hear what's truly pathetic? A 9-year-old girl left behind like forgotten luggage, and no one bats an eye. That's against protocol." "Well, it's according to conscience." Brian cut his microphone, but his crew could hear the simmering rage in his whispered words. "If they want to fire me, let them. But I'm not flying this plane until they recognize that girl as a person, not a mistake in some adoption file." "You sure you want to go all the way with this?" his co-pilot Juan asked quietly. "This is going to make noise. Let it roar. Better to roar than rot silently in a system where the color of a child's skin matters more than her name." Downstairs, after 3 hours of delay, Child Protective Services finally showed up. Late, with coffee cups in hand and an expression that screamed, "What's the problem here, really?" Deborah, a woman whose badge said CPS but whose demeanor said, "How did I get stuck with this today?" scanned her tablet as if she was auditioning for How to Mess This Up 101. "Where's the child?" she asked briskly. "On board with Captain Holloway." "What? We can't let her fly. No paperwork." "You lack conscience, Justin," the young lawyer passenger shot back, brandishing court-approved temporary custody papers accessed via urgent Zoom hearing. "You can't defy a judge's order." "She's black. They didn't like that. That's all you need to know about the reasons." Security started to stir. One particularly eager agent reached for his radio. "If the captain refuses to operate the flight, we can..." "Arrest him?" Justin laughed. "You want to arrest a pilot who refused to abandon a child? In front of passengers and reporters?" Good luck with that. I already tweeted. Who exactly are you? Lawyer, client, and a black lawyer in the mood to cause a scene. Meanwhile, aboard the plane, Amara wasn't hearing every word, but she felt the tension. She sensed that more was riding on her flight than just travel plans. This time, she was not the problem. The problem was everything else. She was the mirror reflecting it all. Brian returned to the cabin and sat beside her. You know, Amara, when I was 10, school told me I was too bold to be a pilot. Said black kids were for sports, not the skies. Did you listen? She finally asked. Number because my grandma told me. The sky is black at night, so it's ours too. Amara smiled for the first time that day. My mom said my braids were like comets. Then you were born to fly. Minutes later, the message came. Clearance granted. The girl was officially under temporary custody. The court had approved the guardianship until Los Angeles. And just like that, the world that tried to break her didn't win, because someone refused to back down. As the wheels left the runway, Amara gripped the armrest. Brian looked over. Scared? Number, I'm just flying for the first time. You're healing. That's something else entirely. In Los Angeles, a crowd awaited. Cameras flashing, CPS officials, lawyers, journalists. They swarmed like the arrival of celebrities. Captain Holloway, why did you refuse to fly? Because that girl is a person, not cargo, and I'm a person, not a cog. That's all there is to it. Amara held his hand tightly. Are you my dad now? She whispered as the crowd thinned. He paused, then leaned down. I don't know, but if you want me to be, I'll try. That night, Amara's story spread across the nation. The agency that had handed her over to the Hendersons was temporarily shut down. An administrative case opened against the couple. Civil rights groups rallied. Headlines read, Pilot Hero Saves Girl from Sky-High Discrimination. But the real victory wasn't on the screen. It was at home, where Amara, for the first time in ages, slept peacefully, wrapped in a blanket. Not fear or doubt, but comfort that someone stood for her. Just like that. This is the climax. Everything you've been waiting for is right here. Stay tuned to see how the hero put everyone in their place. The morning sun over Los Angeles hit the city with an unforgiving brightness, a relentless spotlight that refused to dim or soften for anyone, especially not for a little girl who, just yesterday, had been nobody's at all. It was too loud, too glaring, and everything about it felt too new and unfamiliar for Amara, who sat quietly in the waiting room of a social services building, her bear clutched tightly to her chest, like the last thread holding her world together. Her eyes, wide and deep, held the weight of 1,000 lifetimes, as if she'd already seen far more than a 9-year-old should have to bear. No one told her what would come next. No instructions, no promises. But truthfully, she didn't ask. She just sat there, still and proud, like a tiny statue of resilience, a little black Mary Ann with a child's face that carried the strength of generations. Brian stood by the window, his silhouette rigid and stern, shaped by the countless battles lost and fought in a life that had too rarely offered victory to savor. His gaze was fixed somewhere beyond the glass, beyond the sun, beyond the noise. The woman from social services broke the silence, her voice barely above a murmur, but cutting through the tension. They want to place her temporarily in the foster system until they decide what to do. Brian turned slowly toward her, his expression so steely it could disarm an army. Decide? What exactly do you decide? Who deserves a family? Who fits the decor? Mr. Holloway, you are not a relative. I am a human being, and she is a human being. That has to be enough. You don't have the authorization. Did they have authorization when they left her on that bench? The next day, reporters swarmed the child services building like a storm breaking loose. This wasn't just noise. It was a roar of a community awakened and refusing to stay silent. Black activists, single mothers, veterans, college students, they all stood with signs raised high, chanting, "Not cargo, not property, give her a choice." A viral meme spread like wildfire. The image of Amara sitting alone on that cold bench, clutching her bear. Someone captioned it, "When they left, she didn't cry. She waited, because she still believed. A petition demanding Captain Holloway's legal guardianship gathered 250,000 signatures in just 2 days. By evening, Amara was at Brian's home. Not officially, but with the blessing of her temporary guardian, Justin, who had arrived carrying a pizza box and a folder thick with paperwork. "You know it won't be easy," he said between bites of anchovy pizza. "I know, but I'm done watching her get passed around like a package. I had a mother who died when I was 10, and I, too, once sat alone in a children's room, waiting for someone to decide what I was worth." Amara was on the floor, building with Lego bricks. She wasn't listening, or pretended not to, but then she looked up and said quietly, "Can I call you Dad?" Just to try. He froze, set down the pizza, and smiled softly. "You can, but know this, I don't braid hair. You'll have to teach me." She nodded and smiled back. A week later, JFK Airport was a different place. Where once a little girl sat alone, now stood a plaque, Humanity Point, where one day a child was left behind and one man refused to step aside. Reporters once again cornered Brian. "Did you do this out of conscience?" "No," he said flatly. "I did it because I was angry." "Angry?" "Yes. How long must we watch children who look like us be called unfit?" This wasn't kindness. It was disgust. Disgust at a system where white folks can just walk away and we have to explain why we stay. The Hendersons, meanwhile, tried desperately to sweep it under the rug through lawyers, painting themselves as misunderstood. "We never abandoned her. We just felt misled by the agency." "Sure you did. That's why you left without a word, without looking back." Their charity lost donors. Their faces, captured turning away from Amara, became symbols of raw white privilege, stripped bare. But none of that mattered anymore. Amara went to a new school, prestigious and filled with teachers, unsure how to look at her. "Is this the girl?" they whispered. "From the plane?" "No," said the principal. "This is the girl who just scored top marks in math. She joined robotics club, declared she wanted to build drones, and told anyone who asked that she wanted to be a pilot, like Brian." Brian heard this from the kitchen and nearly dropped his tea. "You? A pilot? What? Don't I fit?" "You fit perfectly. Just remember, the sky is black at night." A month later, they went to court, officially. Brian filed papers to adopt. The judge, dry and white with a face that had seen it all, asked, "Are you prepared to take full responsibility?" "I already am. Just give me the legal right to carry it." "Why?" Brian looked at Amara, then at the judge. "Because she sat in an airport and no one came. Because she had sneakers, a bear, and nothing else. Because I couldn't walk away. Because, damn it, I had to stay." The judge signed quietly and then said, "Mr. Holloway, not everyone can fly, but you, it seems, know how to lift not just planes, but people." The next day, Amara came home with new ID. Amara Holloway. She held it like a passport to a new world. "Am I officially the pilot's daughter now?" "Number, you're officially my crew." "And you're my captain?" He laughed. "You have no idea how much you're the one in charge, kiddo." That evening in their new home, Amara wrote her first letter. "Dear Captain Holloway, thank you for not flying away without me. Back then, I was nobody. Now I'm somebody. Love, your Amara."